I should.
Mother, mother, I feel sick. Send for the doctor. Quick, quick, quick. Mother, dear, shall I die? Yes, my darling, by and by. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So here we are, the man, the myth, the legend, the jelly babies, the scarf. We are in the Tom Baker era, and oh my god, this has been great. This has been a privilege. This has been an experience. This has been, considering what else I've had to go through with Doctor Who as a TV show, this has been great. This has been great. It just is. But anyway, back to the actual work here. So it's interesting because, honestly, you hear that the Fourth Doctor is popular. Everyone always hears it. You see all the lists like, oh, Tom Baker's the best Doctor. You know, there was no Doctor better than the Fourth Doctor. You know, even he would say...
Maybe a doctor, but I'm the doctor. The definite article, you might say.
Okay.
Yeah, and even then, all you really hear is, well, Genesis of the Daleks, you know, Towns of Wang Chang, you know, that's kind of it. And I think that doesn't really do him any, I don't think it does the Doctor any real service. Now, if you're going through this gargantuan era, I was not ready. I was not ready for this 7 seasons. Oh dear God. No, just, I don't think I can do it again.
I'm not strong enough.
But anyway, when I think of Tom Baker after all this, I can't help but feel like he's, well, a Muppet. Like, hear me out. If you made a Muppet of Tom Baker and replaced him in the show, just have his voice coming out, would there be any real difference? Like, there'd be maybe some less jumping, you know, that's kind of it, but really nothing different. To me, Tom Baker takes the Tom Baker era takes the show in a slightly different direction for the Doctor. You know, if you look at Hartnell and Troughton and Pertwee, they're all sort of their own specific mold of the Doctor, which is sort of like this older, more seasoned individual here. Even though Troughton and Pertwee look much younger than William Hartnell, they're always sort of the idea of the older authority figure. Even if you don't quite believe it with Troughton, but I love Troughton either way, so it doesn't matter. Tom Baker, I think at the time, compared to the other three, was the youngest actor. I think he definitely was. I put money on it. So he has to do what a lot of other actors would later have to do, which is convince the audience that within this younger body is a soul that's lived hundreds of years. And what I liked about it, especially in the Hinchcliffe era, which I think is like the best of the Tom Baker era, you sort of see exactly what it means to be a Time Lord.
The Earth isn't my home, Sarah. I'm a Time Lord.
Oh, I know you're a Time Lord.
You don't understand the implications. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
What's that supposed to mean?
And even more so because we go back to, I think, what I liked about the Troughton era, which is like, you know, we're traveling with no real destination. We come across a problem and then we solve it. You know, there's a lesson to be learned here. Or we just, you know, took out the giant robot. The Fourth Doctor is Space Gandalf. That really is. Like, he's a character that is extremely old, infinitely wise. He's forgotten more than we know. It just works. And he has a great love of people. That's why I loved this scene here.
Homo sapiens. What an inventive, invincible species. It's only a few million years since they crawled up out of the mud and learned to walk. Puny, defenseless bipeds. They've survived flood, famine, and plague. They've survived cosmic wars and holocausts. Now, here they are, out among the stars, waiting to begin a new life, ready to outsit eternity. They're indomitable. Indomitable.
And that scene there is something that I think New Who has always tried to get, but doesn't quite get it. The Fourth Doctor era really is about selling the idea that, you know, the Doctor isn't human. They does come from a different society. Whereas I think the Third Doctor feels like, you know, I just come from the future. And that's fine either way. It's fine either way. And of course, we see so much fun stuff here, especially again in the Hinchcliffe era, you know, with the Gothic horror and the return of an eternally banished and dead Time Lord, horrible time experiments, clandestine missions to the past, and of course...
Eldrad must live. Eldrad the Creator, the Savior.
Sarah, what does he want?
Eldrad must live. Eldrad must live.
I'm sorry, Eldrad Must Live has to be a ringtone. It needs to be on someone's alarm. You know, actually, Eldrad Must Live is a perfect alarm. Or if your food's ready. You also have some of the most creative companions, not just in the legendary Sarah Jane and the fun Harry Sullivan, but the proud and lovable savage that is Leela of the Seventeen, and the young and witty time lady Romana, and Romana too. Each of these companions sort of generate a new dynamic with the Doctor, as well as a new way to see companions exit. Some were more tender, like the departure of Sarah Jane, some a bit ridiculous, like Leela's, and others felt like someone shouldn't have married and divorced their co-star on the show. Oh, that's right. I went there. Now, this doesn't mean that the Baker years were all great. Destiny of the Daleks is, in my mind, hilariously bad, because of the Mavellans, if anything, not to mention the Davros mask. But, you know, whatever. And that doesn't mean that there's nothing good in the Williams era, or which in a lot of ways attempted a Hinchcliffe era story, but stories like The Key to Time, which in my opinion are brilliant attempts to tell something really big and fantastic that just didn't quite stick the landing. It felt like we didn't properly plan The Key to Time out. Like, we didn't quite understand what it was, how the Black and White Guardians worked, what the Key to Time is and why it's important, what's its purpose, and how the stories sort of connect with that. Didn't quite feel like we thought that one through. But again, a big epic story is always worth trying, even if it fails. And it feels like J&T era was a bit of a decline for me, but we got the return of the Master and Nyssa, but also Adric and Tegan. But you know, I'm sure they'll work out in the Davison era.
I'm gonna tell him.
Don't you dare.
What's really cool about the Fourth Doctor's era is he kind of gets to do everything. I mean, he doesn't get to sword fight like the Third Doctor, which, as I said, every story at some point should have a sword fight. It doesn't hurt the story, it elevates it. I'll fight people on this. It doesn't matter what it is, a sword fight needs to happen. But when I look at stories like The Creature in the Pit, which I loved. I love The Creature in the Pit. I will defend Creature in the Pit to my last breath. I just love Creature in the Pit. I really do. And you have stories like Talents of Wang Chiang. Actually, Seeds of Doom, I think, doesn't get enough love. Because it is some quality horror. Hand of Fear, I thought looked stupid when I first saw it. It's just a hand on Sarah Jane's back. Like, what is this? Then you see, like, oh, Eldrad.
Eldrad must live. Eldrad the creator, the savior.
Sarah, what does he want?
Eldrad must live. Eldrad must live.
You must live. You must. But even then, a lot of the stories didn't really quite matter as much as the interactions with the characters, which is something I always felt needed to happen. And I'm not getting a New Who. Current New Who anyway. Like, the dynamic the Doctor has with the companion is the staple of the show. Like, it doesn't matter if they're Daleks, Sontarans, Cybermen, you know, but their relationship needs to be important, needs to feel significant. It needs to feel like, yeah, this is my companion. We're going to work together. We got some stuff going on. Even in the Invasion of Time, which I felt is just a fun story. It just highlights more of the pros and cons of, revealing more about the Time Lords in stories like The Deadly Assassin. But we see Leela and the Doctor's relationship go from there. Even as it comes to an end, it's still a great story because of it, and I love it. Love it. The Fourth Doctor feels like he's really trying not to yell at people, and he fails at it a lot. Like, he really does do some yelling, or he's a callback to the grouchy Hartnell era in some ways, because the Third Doctor's like, what do you mean you don't get it? And he sort of like goes about his day in some ways. Like, he sort of like shakes his head a bit. The Fourth Doctor's like, no, what are you doing? No. It's fun. It feels like he could yell a bit more, but he only really yells like that if he's stressed. And he's trying to get people to understand things, like, the importance of time, how we go about certain things, the urgency of the situation. He's really trying to hammer home to you. And it works because Tom Baker's voice is just sort of like that deep melodic way. It sort of helps sell the idea that he could be more than he lets on. That's not to say the time this child happened. We're not saying that. But that he's more than just another Time Lord. And we get that more in just the fact the key to time happens when we meet Romana. You know, Romana, who is supposed to be this ace student at the academy, who's not just younger, but potentially, from a textbook standpoint, smarter than the Doctor. She's like, no, you understand time travel. I am time travel. Like, I've experienced it. You've read it. I've walked in it. I've walked in eternity. It's different. And I like it, especially the conversations this Doctor has, whether it be in City of Death or, of course, Genesis of the Daleks. It's just, there's too much to like about the Tom Baker era, not enough to dislike. Like, yes, I razz on Destiny of the Daleks, and a lot of the J&T stuff didn't work for me. I just tried. I couldn't. But anyway, we're rambling at this point, and I get why it's so hard for people to really narrow down, because there's so much of it. You can just say, well, I like this, and I don't quite like this, but you don't really quite get anywhere. But you know what you do love? You love the Fourth Doctor. You love his relationship with Sarah Jane and Harry and Leela and Romana and K9, even though K9 turns out to be a horrible prop, couldn't go anywhere with him, but whatever. This was great. This was fun. This is Doctor Who. The Tom Baker era ushers in the new era of Doctor Who. And next time we're going to talk about how it sort of starts to fall apart as we go to the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Doctors before we get to the hiatus. So anyway, this is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. Check out some other videos, and I'll catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching, and as always, may your fandom serve you well.